Hello everyone and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. I am Captain Zelnick and today we are going to be continuing our tutorial videos on how to make a fleet and how to build a fleet. And today we are doing that with the Ork Waaagh fleet list. Now there's a reason why I'm doing the Ork Waaagh fleet list instead of the Cyclops sector fleet list. The answer is ultimately the Ork Waaagh fleet list, much like the later Gothic War Eldar list, is simply that an older fleet list with fewer ships in it, given more ships and maybe a couple more rules. So if you want to make a Cyclops sector fleet list, which is just the blue book fleet list, it's just the same as this with fewer options. And very few people are going to be using that unless they are deliberately challenging themselves, which would be a little bit odd for the Ork list unless you are particularly good at using it. So let us begin. Again, I am assuming that you have watched the videos on the Ork list and the Ork rules and all of the things in the other parts of this channel. So I'm going to be going over a great deal of stuff that may not have all of the reference material and explanation. Go and watch the other videos before you watch this one. So, building an Ork Waaagh fleet list. Well, we're here in the remastered official fleets, and we're starting, of course, with command. You may include one or more warlords in your fleet, each of whom must be assigned to a ship or a squadron. Squadron, which means they can be on escorts. If the fleet is worth 500 points or more, it must include at least one warlord. So remember that. If you scale up, you got to have a warlord to lead it. An Ork fleet can include a maximum of one warlord per 500 points if the fleet is worth up to 500 points at F1. If it's worth 500 to 1,000 points, you may have two. So for clarification, you must have 1,000 points before you can take your second warlord. Okay. Now, a warlord is worth 40 points, which is pretty darn cheap. They get one reroll off the top of the bat. You can have up to 2 more rerolls for additional costs below. These are also pretty cheap. A vessel carrying a warlord doubles its boarding value and may include up to one of its upgrades shown below. You can take Maniac Gunners, you can take Mad Mechs, Power Fields, Mega Armor Boarding Parties, and Looted Torpedoes. You may also, if you so desire, take a Space Hulk. You may have one in a fleet per 1,500 points for a whole 600 points. So it is ridiculously expensive, but it's an Ork Hulk, so you would expect nothing less. You can include a maximum of one per 1,500 points, so if it's worth up to 1,500 points, you can have one Space Hulk. If it's worth 15 to 3,000, you can include a second one, etc., etc. Now, the Ork Waaagh fleet allows you to take battleships and battle cruises. The restrictions are for every 2 cruises included in your fleet, you may pick one vessel from the list. You can take Gorbag's Revenge, the Slam Blaster, the Death Dealer, the Cruel Boy, or a Hammer battlecruiser. Recognize that these battleships are all character ships. You can only take one of them. The Hammer, I would point out, is not a character. You can take as many as you want, so long as you have the requirements. Now, you will notice that because of this restriction, there is more emphasis in this particular fleet to take more cruises. In the Cyclops sector fleet, there is more impetus to take escorts because there is no restriction there's no real access for any larger ship. But in this particular regard, it does kind of shift the tonnage upward when it comes to the desirability zone. So, we're on to your standard cruises. You can take up to 6 cruises, terror ships or kill cruises. And when it comes to escorts, you may include any number of escorts in your fleet. You have the Ravager, the Onslaught, the Grunt, the Savage, and the Brute. Recognize the Brute is a later addition, and it may not appear in some of your older PDFs and books. You may include any number of rocks in your fleet, which is just goofy, and we all love it. Rocks may also be purchased as planetary defenses. Ordnance. Ships whose launch bays have a mixture of fighter-bombers or assault boats. Kill cruisers and terror ships can replace their prow batteries with torpedo tubes at no extra cost. This is very important. Okay, Daka, or capital ships can add +2 turrets to their ships for 20 points. This is not the same thing as saying up to 2 turrets for 10 points each. You have to purchase 2 additional turrets for 20 points. Ork Escorts may also add additional turret for 5 points per escort. Every escort in the squadron must take the refit. Okay, so what do we have here? Well, as I mentioned in the overview before, we have a cruiser-focused fleet. Now, there are a lot of ways to build this because you can still make it a very escort-heavy fleet, but you also have the benefit of these battleships. Now, the Cruel Boy and the Death Dealer are pretty generalized when it comes to their builds. In fact, all of these ships have a purpose, but the real value of most of these battleships is to have a really big thing that will distract your enemy. The Gorbag's Revenge is a different story. I'll mention that later. But let's talk about the actual character ships of the Cruel Boy, the Death Dealer, the Slam Blaster, and the Gorbag. I'm actually going to scroll down to their actual fleet, their actual ship descriptions here. So we're going to talk about the hammer in a moment, but let's start with the Death Dealer. What makes the Death Dealer so important? Well, it's obviously very cheap. This is about the same cost as many battle cruisers. Now, if you go and actually watch the video relating to these, I'll go into a great deal more detail, but really the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it has a niche that really needs to be brought up. And it's down here in its special rules. It has super engines, which means it goes all ahead full as normal. Now, it does have a bombardment cannon. That's okay. But really what's important here is this super engine. The super engine means this ship is much faster than actually most of your fleet. So it is really good at going really fast when the rest of your fleet kind of sucks at it. So what does that mean? Overall, it's a cheap distraction Carnifex. It is meant to go really fast, make the enemy waste firepower on a very hard to kill ship, because you can give it with extra power fields. You can give it, 3 shields. But it has good armor. It has decent turrets. It's not easy to kill. And if the enemy ignores it, they're going to regret it, because this is actually a very vicious ship. So think of this as a berserker. Okay? Now, I don't want to do Gorbags. I want to do him last. I don't want to do the Slam Blast second to last. So Cruel Boy, even cheaper. Okay? 270 points. It's very similar to the Death Dealer, only it has Prow heavy guns. It has more super engines. It is just a cheaper version of the Death Dealer. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it being there's nothing wrong at all with it being cheaper, because sometimes you need that extra 5 points. And you know what? Again, Prow heavy guns in the front. Heavy guns all over the place. Other normal guns. The dorsal launch bay. The Prow guns. It is meant to get in close and make the enemy waste their fire on a very cheap vessel. Now, the Slam Blaster is a little bit different. The Slam Blaster has no super engines, but it does have these Lance batteries here. Now, overall, this is a very mediocre battleship, but if you don't have the points for something better and you want something good and tough, this is not a bad choice. But it only has a strength 2 Prow Lance battery, and it's one of the very few places you can get Lances in the Ork fleet. And it's at 45 centimeters. That can and will help you in many ways that you might not necessarily expect. It is an unexpected, long-range lance in a fleet that generally doesn't have them. Now, why would you take this vessel? Well, again, it is something that the enemy has to pay attention to, because if they don't, they will regret it. Obviously, this ship is meant to shoot more than anything else, but it's still an Ork vessel. It's really just meant to get close and beat things with a stick. So we can take a Slam Blaster. Just recognize that it is not going to be a ship killer. It's going to be a gigantic irritant as opposed to a gigantic distraction, like the Cruel Boy and the Death Dealer. Now, finally, we're going to talk about the Gorbag's Revenge. This battleship is neither an irritant or a distraction. This is a giant, malignant cancer on the board. This vessel is among one of the best battleships in the game, simply because it has such insane amounts of launch capacity. It can have launch capacity up to 8. And for orcs, that is a lot. It is not particularly fast. It is just like everything else in the orc fleet at 20 centimeters, but what this can do is effectively take up, if you so desire, all of your launch capacity needs when it comes to fighter bombers and assault boats. It simply can do almost anything, and it has D6 plus 2 prow torpedoes, which means it is, in fact, as good, if not better, than the despoiler battleship with its upgrade, and it's dramatically cheaper for the job. This is a vicious anti-capital ship battleship. Do not ever underestimate the value of the Gorbag's Revenge. It is the most powerful of the Orcs battleships, and there is a reason why you can only take one. It is because it is, for its points, grossly overpowered. So, if you are looking to really irritate and annoy your enemy, take a Gorbag's Revenge. If you're looking for a distraction or an irritant while other parts of your fleet do the job, take the other battleships. Now, as a final side note to the Hammer. The Hammer class battlecruiser is a average costed battlecruiser or battle cruiser compared to heavy cruisers and battle cruisers of the Imperial Navy. The benefit of this vessel is one, you can take multiples of them, and two, it is very, very flexible. One, it's an orc ship that has 2 shields base and 2 turrets base. It does not have a 4-up rear armor. It has launch bays, which can launch up to 4, which is great. It's between, again, 2 and 4. It is always going to be handy. You can launch out of it torpedoes or prow bombardment cannons in strength 6. It has heavy guns and port guns. You can flip out with every reload special order, which one you want. Just remember, you do have to reload each time you fire. Okay? Now, again, principal benefit of this vessel, you can take more than one. And that's really important. Okay? These ships are regularly overlooked. They are among the best ships in the Orc fleet. So going back to the the actual fleet list, there are a number of critical things we must remember when it comes to this fleet. While we do have a greater impetus for cruisers, the Orc Escorts cannot be ignored. Specifically, the ones that I like to bring up the most are specifically Savage gunships, Brute ram ships, and I think it's the Ravager. Actually, I'm going to take that back. All of these escorts are amazing, including the Grunt. I'm not a huge fan of the Grunt. I believe that the Grunt was a good idea, but poorly implemented. Yes, it's nice to have an escort specifically designed for boarding that can take giant claws on it, but I don't feel like it actually lives up to its hype. I think that it's completely overshadowed by the Brute ram ship. You can't mess with perfection. So any orc fleet you're going to take, you're going to want some kind of escort. Even if you are a cruiser-oriented fleet. And even if it's a bunch of Brute ram ships, there's nothing wrong with that. Brute ram ships are dirt cheap. They're also one of the few escorts with a 90-degree turn in this fleet, and they have two weapons batteries that fire front, left, right, which is pretty unique for Orc escorts. Now, the Onslaught, they're amazing. They have D6 weapons batteries. 6d6 weapons batteries is usually more than anything that comes out of most other weapons battery vessels. The Savage gunship has heavy guns. They are very hard to get into alignment for a good shot, but when they do, they basically delete enemy ships. They are also the bane of the Eldar, because if they even get one shot off, they can cause insurmountable damage to Eldar vessels. And finally, the Ravager, which has just torpedoes for days. And while they can't combine their salvos, they don't need to. They can, if you have a lucky roll, have a 6-string torpedo out of a frickin' escort. So remember, escorts are always going to be a priority in an orc fleet. Now, cruisers. Between the terror ship and the kill cruiser have different purposes. Your terror ship is actually going to be the closest thing you have to a main cruiser of the line, okay? Not the kill cruiser. The kill cruiser is actually closer to a light cruiser, not necessarily because it's less tough, but because it's less armed, okay? It is meant to be cheap because they're meant to be effectively disposable. Now, that's unfortunate because they're a little expensive to be disposable, but again, their terror ship is always going to outperform a kill cruiser. Mostly because the only difference between a terror ship and a kill cruiser is the lack of heavy guns on the terror ship and the replacement of for launch bays. Now, you can choose, if you so desire, to effectively take up all launch capacity minimum requirements with a Gorbag's Revenge, take a couple of kill cruises as your requirement, and then just fill it up with escorts. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that fleet. That fleet is going to be brutal. You're going to cause a lot of pain to your enemy. But remember, orcs are a finesse race. You have to know how to use them. One mistake in maneuvering and predicting your enemy, you're going to be having a lot of trouble getting your ships to shoot at the right time, at the right target. Okay? But when they do shoot, they cause a lot of pain. An alternate mode, which is going to reduce the number of ships in your game, is to take Gorbag's Revenge, and then just take a bunch of terror ships. Overwhelm the board with fighter bombers and assault boats. Why not? You have the access to them. Yeah, you're limited to 6. That's more than enough for what you need in most battles. Okay? Now, if you're really kind of scaling up to do the really, really epic scale battles, yeah, you're going to run out of cruiser slots, but that's what rocks and escorts are for. Now, for me, I have a 1,500 point tournament list for orcs that does not utilize any of the character vessels. And I'm going to show you what it is right now. The fleet is comprised of 4 terror ships, 2 Hammer-class battle cruisers, and a bunch of escorts, typically brute ram ships. So if we do the math, the first thing that we have to do is, 1, we recognize our fleet is greater than 500 points. Plain and simple, okay? So we have Ork Warlord. Now let me give me a moment while I get my I have to get my calculator showing so you can all see what I am doing. Give me 1 second. Perfect. Calculator. Boop. Now you can see it. Ain't that cool? Okay, so we're starting off with our Warlord. We have to take him. Because we're an orc fleet, so we're taking 1 base Warlord. So 40 points. Now, I know where I'm going to be putting him. He is going to go on a Hammer-class battlecruiser. My Hammer-class battlecruiser, that has torpedoes. So I'm taking the upgrade for looted torpedoes right off the bat. Okay? That puts me up to 60 points. Now, I need 4 terror ships. Why? Because terror ships, again, as I mentioned before, are the better cruiser overall. So terror ships are 185, so plus 185, plus 185. So we're at 430. Now, I always take the torpedo upgrade for terror ships because assuming I make my reload, it will reload both my fighter bombers and assault boats, and it will reload my torpedoes. So if I manage to succeed, it has a double benefit. But I have my 4 terror ships, Now I need my hammers. So, plus 245, plus 245. Boom. 920 points. Now, I probably should worry about getting some... Now, I have a lot of points left over. 920. I'm going to purchase a second Warlord to put on the other hammer. So another 40 points and another 20 points there to give him the looted torpedoes. Now, escorts. We have a lot of room for escorts here. So my answer is, of course, I'm going to take a squad of 6 brute ram ships because brute ram ships are still among the best things you could ask for. So look at that, 130 150 additional points. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take 2 squads. Look at that, 280. 1,280 points. So that leaves me, so that gives me 6 brutes. I have 2 warlords. They have looted torpedoes. I have 4 hammer class battle, 4 terror ships. So I am launch capacity out the wazoo. And I am still sitting at 220 points that I can play with. Okay? Now, where should we put that 220? We can take more escorts. Nothing wrong with that. We can take some more cruises. We can take kill cruises. We can take another terror ship. In fact, let's do that. Let's take one more terror ship. 1465. Now, can we do anything else with this? Is there anything else that we can purchase? Well, we can easily take more turrets. Ain't nothing wrong with that. We can make our, we have, 35 points that we can play with. Just making sure if I can purchase any more. Up to 1 upgrade. So I can't take any more upgrades, but I can increase the turret value of some of my ships. So, and I can increase the turret value of my escorts as well. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to spend 20 points to increase the turrets for one of my vessels. You know, I'm actually going to, because this is a kind of a weird points level, I'm going to reduce my points expenditure by 30, downgrade one of my terror ships to a kill cruiser. Oops, that was the wrong way. Minus 30. Minus 30. And then, boom, another 20 points. So now, both my Hammer class battle cruises have +2 turrets. So they have 4 turrets on each hammer, basically rendering them immune to most ordnance. So we can actually also go down and take a peek at the individual ships to see if they have any upgrades that we can use. Now, starting with the hammer, I don't think the hammer has any access to upgrades, but I will double check. Well, okay, I can already instantly upgrade my turrets from 2 to 3 for 10 points. So I can give it 5 turrets if I wanted to. I can equip it with boarding torpedoes for 5 points, which is not a bad choice. What's this? Maybe equipped with torpedo bombers for 40 points. That's a nice little upgrade. I'm not going to do it this time because that's a huge expenditure for not a lot of gain. Yeah, I can have up to a salvo of 8 torpedoes be launched, but that's really expensive. But what I will do, definitely going to take that turret upgrade, make that thing have turrets 5. That basically will render it immune to bombers. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same for the other one. Boom. 1495. So what does this give me? 2 warlords. Each of them has 1 reroll. Each of them has looted torpedoes, which means I can re-roll the number of torpedoes that I launch out of my ship when it fires the D6 plus 2. Really important. I have 2 Hammer class battle cruisers. I have 4 terror ships, 1 kill cruiser, and I have 12 brute ram ships. That is a nasty fleet that absolutely nobody is going to go, oh, it's Orks, it's easy to kill. No, it's going to cause nightmares for everybody. Now, again, there are so many options for so many upgrades in this fleet. You can re-kit this fleet in almost any way you want. So let's actually make another fleet really quick, but this time I'm going to utilize Gorbag's Revenge. I'm going to actually be a bit more of a gunny fleet as opposed to I'm going to be more gunny as opposed to launch capacity, so I'm going to dump my launch capacity requirements directly into Gorbag's Revenge. So first, let's grab a Warlord. Now, obviously, because we have a Warlord on a Gorbag's Revenge, getting that reload special order is very, very, very important. Okay? So, going back up to my proper fleet list, not the Ork clans, that's an entirely separate video. Warlord, 40 points. I am going to give him actually 2 extra rerolls for a total of 3. This is important because leadership is not guaranteed for Orks, and I need to make that reroll. Okay? Now, moving on to what upgrades I'm going to take. Now, there are a lot of good options for this particular regard. I could take extra power fields and make it significantly better for survivability. I can take mega armor boarding parties because that's never a bad option if you're going to be in a boarding situation. Or I could take looted torpedoes. The mad mechs is always handy because reroll with dice for damage control is nice. Maniac gunners is really not good for this ship, but the best situation here is definitely looted torpedoes. So I'm going to take that for the Gorbag's Revenge. Now I need in this regard, I need at least 2 cruises. I will take 2 kill cruises, so 155 plus 155. Okay, I'm at 410, and now to take Gorbag's Revenge, 310. Boom, I'm now at 720 points. So that is already 2 cruisers and a battleship. We have a lot of room to fit a lot of mayhem in here. So the first thing that I'm going to do in this particular regard is I need escorts, so we're going to play with escorts. What are we going to take? I'm going to take squad of 6 Ravagers, because I love torpedoes. So that's another plus 240 points. And you know what? I'm going to take some Brute Ram ships, because there's no reason to not take Brute Ram ships ever. Okay, so I have 12 escorts, 2 cruises, and a battleship. I need probably some more cruises. Now, the good news is, kill cruises are just damn cheap, so why not take another? Plus another 155, that's 3 cruisers. Okay, I'm leaving. I now have left 235 points. Now, we have a lot of room for playing around with that number. We can add in a full squadron of onslaughts. We can add a squadron of grunts. We can add in a squadron of savage gunships. But, so, what I think I'm going to do, I have to do math in my head. That's 70, 105, 205. So let's add in a squadron of onslaughts. So 205. I think that's right. No, I think it's 210. Yeah, it's 210, so plus 5. So we're at 1475, 25 points remaining. So let's go down, scroll it down, and see what we can do for upgrades, because typically Ork ships have a lot of upgrade opportunities. Let's find Gorbag's Revenge. Does this have any upgrade opportunities? Yes, it does. We can give it boarding torpedoes for 5 points. We're really not interested in that. Boarding torpedoes are okay. Actually, no, that's actually a good idea for him. So plus 5, and then we add 20 points and give this thing 2 more turrets. Boom, 5 turrets now, basically immune to any kind of ordnance. And it can launch boarding torpedoes with its particularly good torpedo salvo and the fact that we have looted torpedoes. We have all sorts of stuff to help it out. Exactly 1,500 points. What a savage little fleet. Because we have a lot of escorts. We have a total of 18 escorts. We have 3 cruisers. And we have Gorbag's Revenge. What a Chad fleet. Okay, everybody. I hope this has helped you build an Ork fleet. I will be going on to a little more interesting and exciting fleet lists probably going forward because we've kind of done the original 4 basic fleets. Now, I'm going to make a little bit of a note over here in the original Cyclops. Here we go. Cyclops Sector fleet. As you can see, it is very bare bones. You get your terror ship and your kill cruiser, and you get your escorts. You even have the same restrictions on the number of cruisers you have. So if you're going to make a fleet, you really don't need to use this. Okay? It just restricts you, and if you want to restrict yourself, that is fine. It could be very fluffy, but you're not really going to be able to play with all the toys. And I believe in playing with toys. The only thing that was added from the 2010 FAQ was the Grunt Assault ship. You don't get any of the fun things. You don't get light cruises. You don't get battleships. You don't get hammers. This is all you get. So, like I said, the Waaagh list really is where the fleet really should have been and where it evolved into the proper fleet list that we all know and love. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you again in the next video.